Welcome back. Our session for today is Ladakhi Folklore and Oral Traditions, a discussion between Gin Thubstan Pagan, Sri Thiring Nurul Marse, Sri Padma Rigsin, and moderated by Dr. Diskitambo. Gin Thubstan Pagan is an author of 34 books, including both fiction and non-fiction, and a renowned Buddhist scholar. He has written on Ladakhi art, culture, language, and history. Thiring Nurul is an editor, music composer, and translator of more than 100 editions of the book series Shiraza, published by the Cultural Academy of Ladakh. He has undertaken many research works related to Ladakhi history, culture, and language. Padma Rigsin is currently pursuing a PhD from IIT Delhi. His research interests are traditional knowledge, village studies, everydayness of being Ladakhi, and interaction of Ladakh with more extensive social forces like state, nationalism, development, and capitalism. Dr. Diskidammo completed a thesis for her PhD on Gesar, epic tradition in Inner Asia, a case study of Ladakhi version of Ling Gelam Kesar. Oral tradition plays an important role in Ladakhi society. It can be seen celebrated throughout Ladakh in the form of music, dance, fables, songs, proverbs, stories, narrations, or poetic epics. Our panelists will present their views on a range of topics, including the forms of oral narratives in Ladakh, importance of storytelling, interplay of oral narratives in the present socio-political sphere with themes ranging from nationalism, climate change, and the impact of unsustainable development.
Hello and Julie to everyone. My name is Nishkit Ammo and I have the pleasure of facilitating this panel presentation. I'm really honored to be moderating the panel which has such distinguished panelists. In this panel discussion, we are going to be looking at the oral tradition and folklore of Ladakh. And in a few minutes, we will have the opportunity to hear from our spectacular panelists. And in the meanwhile, I'll formally introduce our guest speakers. We are joined by Gin Thubstan Paganle. He is a renowned Buddhist scholar and he has studied Buddhism in Tibet and in Sri Lanka. He is a prolific writer and he has authored more than 30 books, which consist of both fiction and non-fiction. He has also written extensively on Ladakhi art, culture, language, and history. He is the recipient of many prestigious awards such as Sahitya Academy National Award in 2017, State Award in 2006, and 4 times winner of the Best Book Award of Jammu and Kashmir Academy of Art, Culture, and Languages. In 2003, he was conferred with the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Jammu and Kashmir Cultural Academy. He is currently retired as Assistant Editor at the Jammu and Kashmir Cultural Academy, Leh Ladakh. And we're really honored to have him here and really looking forward to hear what he has to say on Ladakhi oral tradition. Our next speaker, Sri Thiring Nurul Marse, and he has worked as the editor of more than 100 editions of annual and bi-monthly book series called Shiraza, which is brought out by the Cultural Academy of Leh. He has documented about 1,000 folk songs from Ladakh, and it is published in a form of a book called Ladakhi Folk Songs. He has also composed some 100 songs on various social themes such as social evils, communal harmony, and traditional values. He has translated short stories from English to Podi, and he has also conducted an extensive research on Ladakhi history, culture, and languages. And we're really delighted to have him here. Our next guest speaker is Padma Rigsin, and he is currently pursuing his PhD from IIT Delhi. He is from Gamzurpa family and he grew up in the village of Hibishupachan. And his research interest includes traditional knowledge, village studies, everydayness of being Ladakhi, and interaction of Ladakh with more extensive social forces like state, nationalism, development, and capitalism. We would like to, without much ado, we'll start with our panel presentation. Our first speaker is again Palvanla, and he's going to be talking about short stories from Ladakh. Again,
Jule Sankan Lamja Samala Jule, Tenenge Dring, Juchi Tospo, Tene Somdong Sikain, the Somdong Juati Nata, Tenenge Janmay Zubina Costamet, Mara in Sumkani rooms, Dandering Atachi Sosena Kazukazu Yot, Te Dantel Tene Somskani rooms yot, Te Scholar Tenenge Dring, what Nija Juchetin, Jezunani. Inna su nga shirikla te last year New York aje ngatara nganme shaches rooms kabo te zane abi meme oni shate te ne tugo ni nyanches solti ngata lada gangme na doga te zose te ne room sama aje chobik jo te alam te nga tukji academy na yote no shirikla te tene testing ne tene nge tukshi samba yo nya rooms ko ngata man nganma gelam ke sarne tas kanji te na chola tene man yang Ladung zen mana mang poji yoten. Tena sala namtar zen mana mang poji te sama rung sita la in winchete. Songba san tene nye dewa na sati sosorik. Nata jisok sena dandria kazuksi chet. Dewa na delte mana gone somste ra somste tizugu tene nye somche singa dot paji yon. Tene ngan la nye somdung chujik chokdik joste tamachik Patun just Princeton, Tezan Tevina, Best Book Awards of Sita, the lectures give soldiers academic on the top there. Tasting at an ending yet the Navin on the Tetsan Nanma task, rooms, Alam Nishu stop doing Pajik, just the Princeton, they were that in Tevina and Kazukazu, some jitos for Borte, Nyalbachan Borte, that they were not delting at Chitos and a Kazuk chet, or that is called the Jasper. Testing is sem stop verte borte. Te wana tene stro koramo te dene ngata ika kargili maktabes kabla. Tene da sangata te tu da tene ngata magmis paoni partal Kazakhstan. Te vedam stunte tene te oni yuliton la kazugu tene ra shoptas te ka spe borte tene pa sem stop verte te ka borte. Testing ne tene ngata gonpaoni na Parpala no truth of churches go lebdo one. Cheer than a town and met and a ritual chipeka who court a jupstana. Nampe your namaneta chip Junka, the natural Latine, Jonas soon Tizu and Yamlen churches, Sika Malus Passam, Tevanyetane, Gelong Namtak and Po, you say, Taba, Ote Yamlen Chokanji, Tevika ported. The natural line yet and a champa chotarki yakzerte. Yakti yot kakte ta tena amane mi turo samai kanga ta room shokanji ko kazugu yang chwa no wa somba san jampa chotar der kan de yaga mitse kwe logistika kwe chichi jos kwe janma samjano la kazugu pantokta kazugu skyops tezer kan de ka no ka testing ne dandri chi soksena ngata phama oni thugun demba nachik ne yasha derena yaskyak zeren Songba sang ngata amane demba ngata ra ngalme lam luksho lama cho janme latmo cho chena tena ne lakpa du dandria tene laket khabar kabar ngata mobile phone zerele te soskuni ne na zuk song semyangste ra tu sot rinjan kolla tanche skorna te skola teoni na yet kapta te bas kyaklang zer kan borte tene chao loldan zer kanji ka borte I rooms bolle Jena Tower Loldan der can become a labja dan country, you don't talk much and more than they were not dressed any to go in Pia, they not Tower Loldan boy and Skumskostena, then a comic toxic to go la Rimon and Delte, Jena Choste. Me, Chota Sampo Yarp, Kazuki, to go in Palla, or whatever, then a Tower Loldan, somebody in Tower that can work. They not chupets unknownly. Tangan man palangata delte tema tapi dandriang tene man chupetsan non dingata man dulin yo kafe otewa tene chuponi kazugi normum taste tene nyalbachan non la chocha dio teskola kafe tene lama loto zampo jukanji yo kafe ta musica talga jochi thama mi lustenji topane wa misebo tondanji gyurchela tene ngata taps bat gospa ngata tenamana zache thumche gonche na dukche sipo jorte tenna be ka goya ste mitse songzal la ta na digamiruk zatpasa lama loto zampo jukanbe tene khong skute kazuk shir du banyam nen zato mitse ton nal dan kanji yongche se chichi tapjor debo desine tene las dar kanji ka jeje no ko ta ngata yong ta kan no le jomdan ne se sung arti kanji yodna tene ngata existence pa pola sopada tene la lu zan la sopa tezu kunika iche lo tap borchet merka chibo chama las guda se ka las zampek chodna tebe dasbu dewa yongi utpa thak chot kanji las ganpek chodna tebe dasbu tene dewa dodenna dewa rewa borenna dewa miong tebe dasbu dunga yongi inba thak chot kando ta yotna mena tene las guda zara no ota tebe ka sped borte las zar kanji ka tene shorbi zar kanji chosto ka ta te bone changtun shangkoren dukani miji ka rungs chosto no hoyone shorbi zar te ka gomata kampani shore testing te du gado shi choste ta jun las na tosti tobeda testing ne las kun ne shore ota te ga kazu shorte tene tabjuk te tosi miuni tabjuk itene mijes kaltang mu chika leptu tabtuk ko tene dasbu chis mindu tebe ka tene shorbu ka choste ta tene tinlan ma khaktani no miji ngata zampoji choste na tebo tene tebe tinlan jal go shespo ngata khaktani giretka 파마온 같다 쳤다메까네 같은 첸모노 때는 파마온 고마만에 같다만에 스케스반에 발라 단단 사파랑 지동시가 디둑시가 렙렙 사파 가지고 탑자때 때는 파마온이 딩기 스캔 오타테고 카스페보르테 틴란 잘고셔 포테네 카스탄 기르까 테본 때네 죽미스 파보테네 지야데나 양살 트롤링 차르고이나 양즈나 이우 에오 지보노안 제가 nga tiskadik pomane mane kora demba ngata juang juang no skadik chupo dete chupo ko yodang yotchenche du nya ngata betcho chiesna yang skadik kunina nga arezian chabachobe chiese me urdu an chabachobe jingne tedane gome thomal lobjong to dinda nga paji ta papon la chesangal nga primary school ne dinda nga pa ta lobjong choste an somwe ina por la lete ka lordun yati dukche se skaf stoka te dorande ni te ko tache se skaf mane matot pasante jet sonka inna mangungi khako ano tene hindi nge lobjong choska ya sanskrit ya mangungi khako ano te changmang ko rara thone skatik pomas tachani no rinjan indo te chamaka sperta zane ngati skatik poban drache dugmi do demba ngata na mane katheng somche du minda tu yang salche kunteun spelling ji man kazugur som do ngati dana yang one na yong mer pa yong do anya o song basa ta te bi ka tane ko ne trolling ji jono jie de ne dang de yang ngata janmes ka dik pona te bo jie de ngata mang che ko phama ji indo dang de yonske lobtuk suin nang ra ba tane nang me chache janme ba rinchen choche tene janme bo ngachan inkan choche shi jie de ne te be ton taxi kapsushik ladgalan dubano lobjong di choste na teba kwa konashi tobetu tege jaste kwa yongo spelche na tizukshia chedol inna ya tade ras kadik zarkan mena darab nakanya sujigin na inopane tebota ko ngatang ko dezana ngati mane jar gel kapchenmu korambo british yoga lomang luskan be jaste ngane miunla lobjong bo tene ko angarezina topte inskadena tesine gala rangwan thoba chigna te inskadi lobjong yotkani miuni laga tene gyar shidwang lo lepsong teno lepsong basa te on tasman machos kapanya jan gyar to iskadik chupo jena te shi zambuling suyang mat kapa inna ave ladmo chos kana on la tebe na komste yotkando tebe ko luksho sultan basa tene chibo changma kora tene inskadina arezina ngatang bruling no loptaji indo thorim lopta indo chugla lopta indo ya temen ba jungi ladnaji yonayang tene tewa tene mimang chitok pe mane korang tewa thong chenmo jang artista cheshinya mane inok panya ngata mane tengosha thongno pat mane inskadina chitong sha arezina chigzerna achama mane jider chokta mane sehan song tangkan choksi tewa ngachan inkan dera choksi tengosha laskungia song tena mane arezina sperek sumputana kurtishin yang mane ra askadina yo namane dukona tewa musti tewa nangjung choksinga ta sonteka tewa sombasa yang sali trolling na yang na salchet niska zomte 저도지 쪽사노 때베나 가족 스페라온요 데스콜라 직자되나 이거 직자되나 데스네 롭간 데칸도 고바네만 가타 랑라 쇼르 롭간 파 사야타칸도 테네 부체라 카스코 차르와네 단데리아이노 마타 민데 라지치세 테타만 스텐간지긴나 코아마네 탑죽만에 테바 롭간 보 롭사라차 테보 스팡체나 테보 양 이죽초체라 테 라미카 양 록타 렙체 마 카스코 차르와 오테 쪼스쿠니카 테니 롭스난 파베자테 가죽 스쿄노네 오테가 쪼스까 테스팅네 테네 밀람미노 이부치지글레 밀람잖아, 제대로 밀람이나 거 삼바 코르테 때문에 민다 밀람에 링야 통하노래. 나도 거 아치와 롱즈라라면 규샤마노. 제대로 노지 다테자나 나타 망체 나타 지토스페나데. 디족시 팀시요 까파냐 아초보와 지버 참마 토발라와 지타마 톱제시. 잔테네테 욕마 노원인네 수카 잡아쳐나죠. 마쳐나 다나 도거나 테네 나가 아치 요가 요포 기운 둑제시는 맨날 까가. 노제가 일람 통까 다코 삼바 역까봐 지 참마도 por las por samanga 포도 아주포 아주 코란 가르 창사 취사 스키자 당 바스톤 nen나테 아주온 차루 삼테 드룩시 삼바 풀테 코 일람에나 통하지나 드룩시 코파 소소빈데 다코 일람지 역까봐네 여다 지나테는 산 체르코 일람 통까 테네 나토타 일람에나 향스테 여자네 다 ತರು 다 롱스와 라마케란데 아주 보자네 तादन तेने को नीलम वो मैं कांसों पे नॉन ओते तो नीलाने का जोस्ते तो तेने गंजन स्टोतम इनो पता दे रंगा था चीज़ों सुजियां सामा में नो पन्या ना गप्पोजी थोन या माने मार्टे कंजी तोसी थोन ते वो ngata nang chung ta no ngarang diring men थोड़े में नांस लो जा बुदिन chen nga yu girchen no berkane sambaji man met kagan met pasa gappoji na jonbaji tuga no wanya तेने जोनबा बेर गातो बा छारमत जोनो ताकति दिगा जिए देनो को नाचुं तानो वन तेने गातो बे लब्जातानो यु जोना इकरा गासेनो संबातो ते मासम देते ते बार गांजो ने तोतम तेने माशी सोंडर दरकाने कालाता तेने लोथुन चिगदिल मा खतनी नो वन sama mane लोथुन ना चिगदिल लुना देस्की दियोंतेसिस तांडे लांडे मीन बट टॉक करते नाती चिचोक्स पिना लांडे जरकांजी यका जरकांजी ना ठुगुने फला लटपे ना तांदो वान्या तांगे ना लांडे मेकानी खुंग्स क्यालते का ते समा नमसो जोस्ते नो माने मोसो लांडे जरकान माने मेत जरते स्पेज ना ते बिकानी स्पेज या तास्ते का ngara का न्याम्यों यों कानी ओते वा तेने लांडे मीट पर टॉक जरते ते सिने ते वो चाची ना लांडे मेकान बो मी समा हा को कान बो यो कानी tel sabla bongran derte tami thu ripa chanji ka tebe kho ripa ta se pia koi ka tre ne tiu ji jor ka pa ne tebe tu shi kana so stanang tiu ba me kan song ka yot pa sa ta khera ka ni tiu bo ta tebe sabs kyong ka pa ne tene tebe sabla koi bongran ji kher ka tene ko gyal ka ko thop ka ne o ta te ko la logi ju ka ta te na dung dan de te no तेने गफेल पुई तम क्यों देख कहाँ तू न्यालवा चंजी लोग उठुक नंगे पोचोस पसंद थप्पू को कोसा थोन पे का लेपकान इसको रांदोत की शॉक्स क्या रांदोत मांग चेस टाकना थप्पू तेने शॉक स्केल चेस का लेबा तेज को लड़ूंग देते ना ता तेन्ना चोला तेने याक सिंगे तां थुपा जैसे ता ngata सिंगे जना दासा कांसिंग जरकांजी चोक्से उन जुक्सान ते समका स्कोकाने ते वा तेने ngata सिंगे जरते नो पानी zer pasan yaxti yut kaknya koi samba tang pasan zer pasan chichi kana ko ka singe gyare naxsena yut kakte singe koramol zer pasan tene ko tuga chano ota te skola lugi yut ka ta ba ma na te chama janol man kerang man izuk tharnya no yuk chatpa yut ka man singe khara man tukjet man in meno kalte thuk ka da thuk na kerang ne ko banda tare chichi no zer pasan in na ko da pena te juk pasan ko son kakna song te ko la la mano nya po jar singe thong kak pa che da ko kulu le ba tin mandi e de circus le te ka circus na ko singe thong pa sa te singe thong te ko khora o ta singe jar kam izuk si yot ka jate te machat pe tene circus pa ni a on la juste singe na thukje se askap thok ka ko o te du logi shi ka ta te jot ta tene nam stock 남쪽 보다는 가다 마달라 녹대 스콜라까 테네 라소즈네 까플 ngata abo nyam sarte na teo nyam soche sang tap jote no sambatang la soze tene yochan changku yogi jani shangku ji skorika room jota ta teo na belte ngata mangpoji sprebo ta ibo tene nye somdung manita tapju songdum sosko no teo ka te mata petene ibo tu ni pieno ina yang room tu la ngorte jote ibina tene rooms trans issues that dun chung just ka then you saw example they member and then ye mata janma ne look la jona storm dun no fiction ne diches storm dus just ka lo sum chi thing ne zer kanji o ta te ba then ajang chang tang pa ji ka spebo te just ta ton tak po ajang chang tang pa bo lo sum chi thing ne ko le ka le zane then nganma lo sum chi sangan la ko le 총아 둘린도 것까 대전에 가족식이었더니 미운이 다 규제 스콜라까 다이나 스토리 오테 쪽세 때는 좀동 스콜라 좀 스칸 룸스 단들이 지속세나 다 가족식 요 지속세나한테네 그 만엔 장난 나쪽식이었대노 대원이가 스페보트 때때 네 좀두세 때니 이 대군 좀 스테노 이거 지에는 이 스톤 이슈나 바만에 탑주고이도 보기를까. 대행한 라톰스카니 대원이나 다망차 조중 야답 로규다 대두권이 가망차 될까니노. 이야기 두지지.
Again, that was really a brilliant presentation of the stories authored by you, and being a prolific writer you are, it goes on to show that the kind of stories that you have authored, it has dealt with various social themes, and storytelling being an important part of Ladakhi culture, and you have taken that to another step by writing and authoring stories that makes sense and being relevant to the present situation. And your stories dealt with various themes such as poverty, such as bravery, nationalism, and technology to parenting, and from taking a life of a yak as an example of life, and various social evils such as alcoholism, procrastination, laziness. And you also spoke at length about the importance of knowing the Ladakhi language. And I feel that it's really important to know the Ladakhi language, as my own Ladakhi language is not so good. So I didn't have the opportunity to read your books. And if that had not been the case, then since you have written such good stories, and I'm sure the stories will benefit our generation and the future generation as well. And we should really make it a point to make both the language compulsory and important in a regular day-to-day life. So our next speaker is Ajamle Thirin, and he will be talking about the oral history and folklore of Ladakh.
July, tenen dimba, nirma tuska zampoji no, tuska zampoji top, chia zena ngatang nganme, tenen rung zindo, lu indo, chidang chiji indo, ngal langatang specie gyude ya, chijuan lokle tangatang, ikcha gyude metkan duale, mang chao kertenang kargun la shachas, chikang chigi ngatang shan chachas pedeno, teo songpa sangna. Tene ngan ma tar getak nishu sang ngan esperatang ai getak nishu saksi sang ngan esperatang ale tene I zamshi ngatang rungju zamshi ngatang luyu yatena cholang ngatang khaspe tanspe te sangma tene khargun la yongdo wala mion la orang mi chikang chik de jang tele teus kut pasang na ta tewo makhakchan ando wale innang rung shachaspo laksina ma circar demoji luskan inchadu tene rung spo kertenang tete sakwa shar nyanchad nam ngadai speed sharin ya sakachun saka chos kanawa rung shachas sirka o metkan duale te kanawa rung shat michokchas tene nam sakpala stontok na amile tete sakpa rung man shara metkale rung shachas te o metkan inka chiazerna dangdriya ngata laga TV yote nogle radio yote nogle te chokla ngata daksa gaski chuchas ya semyang chuchas ichal mama poji yote nopa ngala te chok metkale medana nyampo yalla rung shatna spechon ngata speed nawa stone sakpa ngata rung shendugna lazla tushur chatka lazla la shak chatka rung shendugna rung nyanchakpa temi samate ka zompa tene la shak chatka teo songpa samna saka chospa na stone tok na leblep sakpa rung na te chacho metka te stone tok na le testing buna tene ang pare saka chocho sakpa la rung shatka ta teo chia shaden chia nogzerna rugun la pilo las manamet kalale yarlanga ta jin kala jung chapa pilo las puskan kanopa rugun la tenenga ta pilo las manamet kanogle ten rugun la na las kan kalka penna pomoni bal cultures namu taxes puzaonis ya tene yokto yokchas teoka zugin na nangjiga gir korte nangsangbo zomte tene 다 부자원이 욕도 욕자는 다 파자 첼리 탁세는 텔라스 상만 나라스 상만 때 두자 줬어요. 데네 포모는 발 칼처는 데네 때 두주자는 때 상만 운을 줬죠. 다때 조자나 코나라나 두그나 코 순자나 와래. 데네 때 나가 양카 샤트 데모 요트간지 룸스 갈라 셰스투 셰스간지 데네 때가 라스 쩐지강 룸샷바 양운이 냔지 글라스 줬바 Chikta semskit ngata semla semla deskit yon kya nispa las pongnyam potula kya ale teos ket pasana nganma tezu rung sechasi cirka yoteno ta rung spa na kachi gecha wale chik chik kirtenang lingalam kesare rung juste tenemma rung chenmole rung zingmole te lingalam kesare rung spo shatkan mami khar demo yotkan tene shatcheskan tene rikpa chenmo yotkan lamene te rung so shat nyanting ni duwa che zana ko ringmo no pale tene tena nga te rung so shat zana mi na nga sem stop ke chuk cha sale kazui ma mi chi senta nyamshung jigir nang kwa mana shante sem so ke selas mana sem stop las cho nyancha si te rung te skor bas kan ka cha du yale tene yang teo man pa tene chumdan da si zatpa yoten ole kawa nga tan dangrian jata ka sector ju wale tene kawat zatya paksam thising juwa chokta tru tene zatya mang poji teno tene te sangmang yang sui te wang shada zatya te chunga no te kana tene ngata chi ha wat kyazana las guras las zang poji chona kazu taksa gen ne suwa zatsa las zang poji chona dasbu zang po mingche dasbu dewa skit po yong chasle las ngan paji chona dasbu dungal yong chas skit po me yong chas tene te sangma te jata ka story nam demo choste tene songs te kan te osket pasana te rungs po te on tene rungs sulanga ta sha za tene tenna cholanga ta mangpo ji sante do chizan timet kungdan nam thar juste tene nangsam odbumen nam thar juste tenna chola tene doazang men nam thar juste te chokse te un korang yang nam thar mar gaswa ji no innang yang ata khaspa yang shas kan te wang rung sokla tene miun la shate ale tenang na laz yang laz guta sisko la tizu ya go che teno teo man pa tene ngata yang jiksten log la tene rung nang ko ji shache kyale spena abi meme ji gut kalo abi meme nang rama ji gut kalo zera so te chok si rung mang ko ji yang shache si cirka yoteno te sangma temba mahala shasino innang te sangma chikdang chiga khargyunla chikdang chi sorte chikdang chi gyute tene semsina itu chose shachas masto manma tene te un ikcha bhabste spitoa diste uchas midwale te usket pasang tene tizu tene shan song tene tuzla gurjal hep miuni nanza shi healing song lazmang poji chokse biya chikna yampo tene te rung sangma shachas pu daksang ngata dun lamido wale rung shat kanang metkan le shat nang kanang metkan le tizuita gyurte wale innang ta daksa tus pute ole te no le te rung shat kan tarung yul mangpe nanga shat sheskan mangpo jik juk ste kale ta su skunar tespos kyote to su tarung jonjon yoto ta te tuspul hepten chadule te rungs pu changma ngadang skyote yakazu tapshik chadnang songte tene te un daksanga dai iche to aphawa nang record zar nang te zat bosha duale tyo menna tene I changma ngadang songsha si jikspa duale skyot pa tene tena choklanga da rung na yampo luyo tenole ru changmang hanla speto amana met kagele specha dis te ya kertena ngata ikcha ikchoste mana met kag inna yang mi chi tan chi gi tene ru salenji changma yang jar zum skode tena changsa chusa to dun dang ji to ya pa ston ski ton ji to ya losa shubra ji to te sana changma jar zum skod pa tene chi tan chi yang ru salen tu chon yan daksa sakpate luna manyam sangatila yoten khale ta daksa tuk sigurte dogle rung somcha si indo rung shacha si indo yatena cholo lujik salcha indo lujik lui circa jik chocha indo ya yangs ngata rolmoji indo tene ngata lang ta yokswa bincha indo menna yargunna te institution gurte dogle daksa lopta issues te ya lopta chokchos te tena abduale nganma ngata te chokse institution yotka gazna te duale chezna losaris kabla ngatang samajal zum skyodachi sudang su rung salatu ya chisan mangchawta losarung chang lu salchale ngatang te nanzom te lu salachi te rangjini korang ngata chisan kale Minjik se lopta jing manba rangjin lopta jing kurte na korang letan sketches te jik nan chi ngata chaga sketches ma solution duwa main na e jok sketches na ne henu ni ka sketches jak ni sum juksha ne henu ne yan poske tu jasta sacha ne skap lanya pito unna tene rung salchas ru salchas izu tene ngata circa hun manma dulten chaduwe Paskyot pasangna tene tangi innar getang ishu pe juk getang ishu sakshi pe wonla tene ngata chichos ginale ndaksanga ta shiri glass de kachre gari mi chogna tene ngata yang skapshiga rung sas kanuni nun naskyote kongoni kana rung lente tene te ospetoga ndaksa phapste rung si chakspe ngatuk chik daksa konga phian zate kagle tena tene ngata lak se thunu main ge rung sale tene te rung skun tene ngata ndaksa spechina chokri zate no teo ma takshot pono takshot ma no ma rung khachik me taro ma yo no mo pu ye chadu wale tene tena ngata rung spo diriya sang lo sumchu ji ran la chikstong gopiar gya chu ni na tene chigal khagna yang research zat kan hales jibjuk zat kan mang pojikskot Teskyo zana teni ita yang ngata lak se rung sika kone jibjuk zate sting na kong PhD degree ang nena zato innang tene te rung sposal zana kong German maji impinale tene kong te PhD rung spos thesis po submit joining yampo te ka tene mamang pospera jions tole demba I rung spo Ladakh spe rung zino yang ati rung zino German pa hale chezenna tebe chiga chokspo choksduk zerte thimbo chokspo hale mai ji chokduk zerte mingun sosoduk zerte shatang bong halam chokduk zerte tene kazuk shinok zinjina konte ma spirachin nong wale skyot pasangna ta nye juchas putewen Ladakh la kazu rung shate chokla yang samyang te chokse rung shacha se circa yotidu ten rung singa ta te rung chun sama alam choksok shi chidu penna shin po jiget ko abi meme jiget ko tizutu nga da rung shatu wale sket pa ta nga ta te rung chik na spenna jo jiwa dang shang abo zerkane yang rung shine nazu chun jig dak sange shadnale jo jiwa zerkan bu ko jo jigin kyapa skutak jigin kyap inang kwamma chiga samama dang nang diet kyap shang abo zerkan mi nyalba chan kyap ko ma rikpa chan tung yok chadu wale te yoda na nyampo chichos tole ta kongisko nyampo zomte kongisko zawon kyapa tene kongisko zerto ngata daldo adul na ngata staji ko so zerte Kerang steak news, Niang steak news, the Jojiwe. Then Shanga business told you, my galera, in Nangasta and Nagananyo to Vinhale. Then Niranda Chupono, Union Onion German holders. Then it teaches, but then I think go Padma staging yon hazard. Ah, Shangabele, Shangabunyal Bachanim, two Jim Japa, Kurs Pachanity. Then Tiong the Mora, then it cannot pet Pujin Bonga Tangna, near Pejin Butangata, staking in the coins to Steiners to in. Steiners pa, then it teaches to the style. Staginius, Conisco, Stai Jum. This Nirang John holds this day. Nirang Scutagan, Nirang Jones. Niranga or Spanos, they stood by Juxaspo. Nga, Chiga Nyalbachan, Nargaba to others day. As take a spoop the churches. The Mardemor of the Oses Poco, Joe in Galazashing never took Sartupa. Then it was take us to do Jospa. Then it Stargos all this day. Star shall Stagos. What your Stagosano, Joe Kenzer. Then it started na Takazuk Joe against us. Star stood Nazan all this day. The Union that was all this cheese in a stay stood Ponirin all this day. Smart Pomino. Then it was Star Jospa. Tacosta Tangos Valley. Then it was Chatancho. Chow quack Pantoale. There's of Chun Chan and Yambo. Then it actually stala Tuluskestohale. Sunan Coteo the Stole, Stot Punirino, Milan says, Tulunian all this day. There's all that Tontapunia just in. This is with an Ripa, Nata, Chiga Duale, Ripa Kazui. Skate to the natural attending a die. And Dr. Chumlanda singing the Reju, the Jataka Story School, the Mochos thing at Amamim Salazar Tuale. The Natsola, I be meme rooms, Nata, the Onion, Jataka Story in Amankan. So sono, in a large grass called Shatuale. Ya Achenomo Sumyotna, Achenomosuna, no tildes that can boy, young large grass is called Leonduale. Special no tildes that can tildirin, but tildichipa. Yot Pasangna, Tildirichi Chostongenale. Targun song Katanspa, Ache Chenmuang Nangjigma Kampatak Pojit, Ache Barman Kampatak Pojit, Ache Nomochunlang Kampatak Pojit Capole. Yet put the little Ache Chenmi Kampason to Achele Juju, Drin Kang Tangwana, not Dansami to others. Then Ache Karshanti Kestonginane, Kerangala Sama Madame, Yendansami Dansers. Then Eco Ache Barmeka Sonto, Juju. Nga dansa mi ta hazard. Ache barme khar anta tem shi maskes to pa in nang dansa ma chos to ale. Tene no mo chungta ka som to juju ta nga tangmora. Tene nga dansa mi chu azes pa. Tene gel kera angi dansa twin na yong zes pa tene kun na kherte chikta ko gun tangmo som ma mebe ta se ko to no ta chos to le. Nis pa ko khaji baji ta se maski ko chos ko to ale. Teo chos pa tene banchiga Then Tildi desert of the Jungai Katabaxum Salzers. That's it, Rang Chang Metapa, Koranas with Chipajimani. Then no Metabaxum Rixpa. Then in Banchia Kotabachi Cascusto, the Sercusto. Then Tabachica young Coscusto, then a Mulcusto, young Tabachica Que, Scuspa, then a Ujuru Muti Minda Scusto. There was Motabagan de Sompa. Then a Teoqua, no chon, Teo Jorale. Then in Nomochuni, teachers doctores who put the you say you mutik someone like Sketchos, and to Cabans. The old Achi Barmeton. Why cannot down a jam with Dimon can I look up Jan Gusto, conical spins, now can go to Gugane. Dang no children and ye at Tojospin, Kona, Borpin, na Borpin, quite another store. Then Jubas is no children, ye got donuts, there's the store, Achi Barmele. This person, no much no children as a store. Achi Barming and Annie don't ask Juruk. Chenazes, Machin. The Achi Barmega Sonto, Achi Barme, Nango Miarchas money, come as his story. The Nian Quachi Barmega Sonte, Don Lonzospa, Yatabaxum stones, the Nian Quitabaxum Dasto. The Vaxica says it's a piece of Chica Mulgis a piece of Chica Tene, Que, Uchurumotic Chicos to Hale. The Nian Stigmaja Achi Barme, they were taxed the Katoabim, Achichin Maton. What in Kiran Dangnaman met new Kazui spins. Then I no children is the stop. Then no children, you got one last girl. I just in me. Then girls is by young no, I just in the I just in the compare years as Zana, Kaski set can, Koshon set captain. Then young there is so that about some tongues dog. Then girls is beyond transfer. Chichika, Minnecoran. In men's research, a pic, Chichika, then a huge cheese and music a pic. Chichika, then a huge room with much chaposcos to Hali. Then it is Takpala, which is captains and a course on to Hali. Song Pateka Nangada Labjateo Tovano, Totuale. Nadan Laz Gallic Jona. Mijigata, Kamaska, Kokamaskin and Dixanopolis, and some mids and images and Dixano, Achikaskis Kappa. They be just the qua Jangma Toptoale. No more be Barmabe, Kamaskin and Dansa Mayat and Dixanjus Toto. Chun be tene qua Yashachus for some. Tontapotekana, Tenangatan, some chick and chigae, Cardemo, cheese center, Jaltardemo Molin, chick chiga, Natan, Rosarna, the chick, Panton, Tetos put a room speaker. Then they sang Mangatan, Laxe Rumsi, Kachoshi Duale. Then all the talk sang Manma Chiet Kazerna, then meet some mandering Hana Jukan Solar, Gulna miss some gear corpa, chick the chaklas Pudubat, Nispa Kirsten and Landry Solangata entertainment Jusamena. They talk it young Chiaji met Pasangna. Then a common cheese at Kelly, then a room shes can room shine jigna, Nanga, ear college uspa, Chicta Laglas Pudubat Kali. Cow Kirsten and Dandini Solangata. Bazanas Godin, Tene, Namzaji, Pirashigman, Chigman, Tetsoxputis, and them she get to Midwale. Rana and Na Chitama. Tontapo Ran Nanga, Karkana Chunji. Manakoran Dustik Duale. Teneteo, Daxetsola, young room shading, Rutanjing, and Tetsox, Tenete, Circa Saman Duti Duale. In Nang, Ranma Te Sama, Karyun Lashachesmane, Speto Amana Midwale. Tene Nata. Kiachak Churgupe, Guano, Chixton Rubiaru, Sum Toxconina, Frankish, you can belar la lepto. Kong is the Toxitene, Ichamang Pojik, Nyarachos to Painas, the Toa being Maving Toale, Zukutenemang Pojik Daxa Koran, Kona, you latin atan lax, rooms nang, lax, and mere who nang, then not chocolate and a Kesari rooms among Pojikwe, Chocolate just can enter to lay in Spetoa, then a Mavin can enter to. The natural then a mangata, Chigashat and Jesus and Caspetam Pejus the day. Then a Teuniang Ma, Sangmala young Kenamano, in Nankaunis, then a Yula Shaks, Kaunis, Yuli, Jesus and Kakurchos, the Govan members of Thursday, then a Shaksbach Chimson, Teuna, take Caspetam Peomana, met coming Ken Goshas. Then they or you take on the sharks and they circa Mardimondole. They sang monks Petova Metganole. They sang Mank Koran Karun Lashes many, but Daxata, the young SS Girgan, Jugan Beteo, and Banchi, Koran Spetova, Zate Duale. The man they sang Ma, Natan and Makarun Lateno, Daxa, they sang Mangatan sang me. Kazui Tapskirnam, Zat Goshas Putarum, Markaxan Dukjes and Andarum Tetsoxi, me used to it and Shat Sheskan. Guzjutkan. Then a bunch of them stones and Angati Laxi, Rikshu and a Kaktik Metkan Chachas Padwale, Kesare rooms indo, Ya rooms chun indo, Laxetolali, Ya Jataka Siturunta, Tarunko Matan, Ngana, Chakspe Yoteno, Changada, Stone Chassis Pamidwale, the Romari area Chachas money. In Nang, Matan Tunum Mayan be room sang Maston Chassis Padwale, Tiun Matan Yarazat Gosha. Matang Sangme, Kazu Tapshis and Teoma took some Yachin or Salgo Shadu, Teo Mednangata Rijunjik Demba, the Junjigamana, Metkancha, Teo Metkancha Nangata Manapran, young Jalak Chichi, Natai, Jason, Pastelzod Namanakono Metkan Chachaji Paduale, the Soxik and the Ring Justin to Jechi.
Thank you, Ajambe. That was really interesting. As you rightly said, oral tradition and folklore are generally the latest expression of the cultural community, and it's a source of inspiration and it's a source and inspiration for generations and for future literature. For it reflects the history, culture, and tradition of of the region in which it developed. And in Ladakh, one can this rich tradition of oral folklore can be seen celebrated in festivals, songs, hymns, fables, proverbs, dance and music, and in narratives of epic poetry such as Kesar epic. In this regard, oral tradition and folklore play an important role in informing us about the indigenous and the local tradition of Ladakh. And as you have mentioned, most of the stories in Ladakh are mostly oral, and storytelling used to be mostly an winter activity in Ladakh. And you also mentioned about how this art of storytelling is declining in the present times, and how it is important to document and record these stories and the narrations of epics such as Gesar, and you spoke at length about the importance of having documented these stories and epics. And and the next speaker, Padma Rigsin, and his topic is the king who had to be quarantined, the Battle of Hibishupachan, 1947 to 48. Padma Rigsin.
Thank you, Diskit Amule. Both Gyan Paldan and Ajahn Sering has sent me in a guilt trip about my language. Although I do speak Ladakhi, my first language is Ladakh, my local dialect, but I write and think mostly in English. So, as Diskit has pointed out about my story, I have come here with two oral narratives from my village, Hibishupachan. The village is situated 70 kilometers west of Leh town. The first narrative is about the battle between the Indian Armed Forces and the Pakistani invaders in Hibishupachan in 1947 and 1948. This oral narrative is titled as the Battle of Hibishupachan. The second story is about the Ladakhi king Jamyang Namgyal and is titled as the king who had to be quarantined. Both stories are vital for my future research. The history of the battle provides critical insights into the origin of the Indian nation state in the frontier region of Ladakh. The story about the king offers an essential entry into the Ladakhi worldview informed by the belief in the local spirit world, that is the realm of La and Lu. However, for this presentation, I do not intend to provide any what could be termed as academic analysis. I will present my English translation of the oral narration provided by Abba Titi Namgyal of Toropa family and Abba Lobzang Sering of Khastara family from the village. Although I will enmesh my observations and imaginations in the following presentation. With this heads up, let us go to the first story, the Battle of Hibishupachan. We are more or less familiar with the 1947-48 First Indo-Pak War. We know that the Pakistani invader reached up to Srinagar in 1947. The panic-stricken Maharaja called for India's help to push back the invaders. Sardar Patel, the then Home Minister, agreed to send help only after the Maharaja signed the instrument of accession. After J&K acceded to India, the Indian Army personnel landed in Srinagar and drove away the raiders up till the present-day line of control. This is the main story, but this is not the complete story about the war. For the Pakistani-backed attackers reached almost up to Leh. The invaders, killing and pillaging, reached up to Ladakh Konkha, a small pass where from after which Leh is only 20 kilometers away. Presently, an army-maintained Gurudwara is situated at Ladakh Konkha. In 1947, the Indian Army landed on a hurriedly constructed airstrip at Leh and drove the attackers westward. On their wicked journey towards Leh, the raiders established one of the bases in my village. It is narrated that a group of invaders stayed in one of the houses. Household name is Gangzurpa, which is another Gangzurpa. My household name is also Gangzurpa. So, to counter the invaders, two companies of the Indian army along with local militia came to the village. The elders inform us that the Indian army was mainly composed of the famed Gorkhas. They were being led by two Himachali officers, Harichand and Prithichan. The Indian forces were also composed of members of the local militia, including men from my village, Meme Chetan of Phikarpa family, men of Gongmangun family, Chulichanpa family, Padma Rigsin family, and others were members of the local militia. The rough and tough Meme Chetan was alive until few years ago. In Hibishupachan, the Indian side lost the battle. The forces led by Prithichan had to retreat towards Leh. Few even lost their lives. Their last rites were performed in the village. Their graves are known as Gorkhe Romkang, Gorkha's grave. One Lobsang Sering, a member of the local militia, also lost his life. He was from Shargol village. He, however, achieved legendary status for his display of bravery in the battle. Legend has it that he killed as many as 20 raiders before losing his life. There were songs sung by the people praising his bravery. The Indian army had to face defeat at Hibishupachan. However, with reinforcement coming in by air, the raiders were eventually defeated and sent back. What is interesting for me is the period between the lost battle and the eventual victory. During this time, the people of the village had to accept Pakistan's sovereignty. Abba Lobsang Sering of Khastara family was 7 years old during this time. He remembers how he and his fellow villagers were made to shout Pakistan Zindabad regularly. Moreover, the village headman, Meme Lobsang Dawa, Meme in Ladakhi means grandpa, the head of the village found himself in a precarious position. As the Indian armed forces had, after the Indian armed forces had retreated, he had to offer his village allegiance to the Pakistanis. He had, however, to pay for this act later. Because when the Indian forces eventually won, he was called to the officers' mess, which was established in the Toropa house. It is said that he and another Meme named Sonam were tied to the pillar of the main living room in the house. Officer Prithi Chand was inebriated, it is remembered. He fired his weapon at one of them and missed the shot. The missed shot is deliberate or unintentional. It is unknown. The following lines are my observation. In the context of the people in the mainland asking for war against China in the summer, the above period is to be remembered. Despite the eventual victory which saved Ladakh from going in under Pakistan, it is essential to remind us that the horrors of wars that fell on the locals. In every village, the raiders ransacked houses and put demands for livestock and food with wantonness. What is more is that hundreds of now forgotten soldiers and Ladakhis like Lobsang Sering lost their lives. Moreover, in singing paeans of victory, what is foreclosed is the misfortune that befell on Ladakhi women in 1947 and 48. Oral history from Saspol village inform that women used to color their faces to not invite unwanted attention. Furthermore, there is account of one woman from Saspol being kidnapped by the pillagers. It is believed that she died in Pakistan a few years ago. This story from Saspol was narrated to me by my friend Stanzin Gombo. And from this caution and the story of the birth of Indian nation in the frontier region, now let us go to the second story, the king who had to be quarantined. We are told that Balti king Ali Sher Khan defeated the Leh-based king Jamyang Namgyal, who ruled between 1595 and 1616. Baltistan and Leh, along with Kargil, could be considered as whole Ladakh. Namgyal was captured and was released when he got married to Khan's daughter, Gyal Khatun. The king returned to Leh with the new queen and her attendants and followers. Namgyal decided to settle the attendants and followers at Gunsarthang, a plain area near Hibishupachan. There was, however, one problem. There was no water at Gunsarthang, so the king decided to bring water via canal from Hibishupachan, which is situated at a higher altitude. The king was himself overseeing the construction of the canal. As the work was under progression, one of the workers accidentally killed a lizard. Lizards are considered as sacred. It is considered as flu or manifestation of flu. Due to the accident, the king was afflicted by a contagious disease known as zenith. Zenith is translated as leprosy. Being a contagious disease, the king had to be isolated. The nearest isolated place was Dragmar, a cave hermitage located northwest of the village. So Ladakh's king quarantined himself at Dragmar. Monks use Dragmar for long duration meditation. It is dedicated to Kasal Kosal, a frequent visitor to the refuge. His statue is placed in the sanctum sanctorium of the cave, along with that of Guru Rinpoche, who is the presiding deity. When the king got ill, Kasal Kosal was at Dragmar. He looked after the king and performed purificatory rituals known as Thus. However, the king condition worsened and emissaries were sent to consult the Marho La, the oracle of the Marho monastery. The oracle advised them to invite the famous Drigungpa sect Lama Choje Dhanma from Mount Kailash in Tibet. Thus, envoys were sent to Tibet to request Choje Dhanma to come for the king's rescue. Choje Dhanma looked for auspicious signs before agreeing to come, and he found one in the Mansarovar lake in the form of a stone which had Hu written on it. Hu from the Om Mane Padme Hu. Choje Dhanma arrived, and the king, it is said, gradually recovered under his supervision. Notably, the king's recovery must have taken 2-3 years. A journey to Tibet used to take 3 months. So the king must have stayed in my village for a considerable amount of time. So the following section, I narrate my imaginary conversations with the spirit of the king Jamyang Namgyal. Before that, we should know that Dragmar was an ideal place for extended meditation or quarantine quarters for the king because of the spring water located near the cave. To our dismay, the spring dried up 2 years ago. The juniper tree, considered sacred, sustained by that spring, is also half dead. Now, last summer I was in my village. Dragmar area has 4G internet network coming from Gunsarthang, which now has a military barrack. Gunsarthang, as we can recall, is the area where the king intended to settle the queen's attendants. So I went regularly to Dragmar in my auto attendant to access internet. And one day I saw the spirit of Jamyang Namgyal and invited him to sit in my car. This was the first encounter among many that followed. The king would greet me in the tone of Ladakhi spoken in our region. Lai, Chibet, hey, what's up? I thought to myself, since he spent a considerable amount of time in the village, the tone is understandable. In a non-challenged way, I would often reply, Net Zoget Gyapokhen, surfing the internet, my dear king. From our conversation, I came to know that the king had been reading a lot in his quarantine quarter. He has become a philosopher king. He knows a bit about Tibet studies, environmental issues, critical tribal studies, and feminist geography. And in one of the heart-to-heart talks, the king said in a dejected tone, do you know about the king said in a dejected tone, do you know about the dead spring near my quarter? I said, yes. He thought for a while and hypothesized. I think it is dead because of the locally produced black carbon or soot. Not that the global industrial system is not responsible, but I recently read somewhere that soot is produced by burning of coal, wood, or more importantly by diesel. From the window of my room, I often see trucks coming in lines like ants. They are probably bringing in cement bags, carbonated drinks, packaged water, steel, aluminium, condensed milk, vegetables or other things which my Ladakhis probably don't need or could produce locally. I interjected the king and said, the cement bags are being brought to construct hotels for tourists and houses of neo-literate and neo-rich locals. It is for the economy. But what about my spring? The king responded sorely and paused for a while. The wind gushed and jolted the car. The Facebook Messenger notification filled the atmosphere of the vehicle. And the king spoke in a low but heavy voice. I heard that spring. I heard that spring in Achinathang and other villages are also dead. The glaciers have also receded. Floods have become common. The village streams are reduced to a trickle. Then, donning his scientist's cap, he inquired, "Do you know, according to IPCC reports, in the next 80 years, 70% of glaciers on Tibetan Plateau will disappear if the global temperature rise is not contained within 1.5 degrees Celsius." I have read about this, I said. Then what the hell are you doing regarding this? Prompt came the reply. If I had my body, I could have waged wars against this, the king added. Like the war waged against your fellow Ladakhi king in Baltistan, I retaliated. The king said hesitantly, "That was another matter." Seeing that he is taken aback, I pleaded the king. "I understand your point, but reviving your dead spring, I think, will not be possible. But we could try to protect those which are alive. What is more important is to understand that our enemies do not come in shapes and forms. Our enemies flow in ideas and discourses. We are fighting against ideas of reckless capitalism, patriarchy, of patriarchal relation to nature, and parochial nationalism, and so on. So these are not easy enemies. We cannot attack them because they flow in our syllabi, our minds, in media, probably in literature fest, tourism promotion activities. People, including our people, embody these ideas. Yes, my king, you have heard it right. These days, your Ladakhis embody these ideas. I get your point, the king contemplatively said. It looked like he would go and read more on discourses, probably starting with Foucault. The sun has just done itself behind the mountains. The kinetic energy in the wind had reached its crescendo. I was getting tired, but I could not resist asking the last question. I asked the king, "Why don't you live in Leh? Your son's palace is palatial." The king was getting out of the car and uttered aggressively, "There is Bamgad in Leh." For those who don't know what Bamgad is, it is the waste dumping ground in Leh. As the king was climbing his way towards his quarter, I rolled down the window pane and yelled, "Don't worry, we will also make a don't worry, we will also make a Bamgad in Ragmar as well." And with this, I came back to my village. And thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. That was a very interesting talk. Thank you. I'm going to be talking about the emergence of Gesar epic as a political tool for nation building and identity formation in the 21st century. For this reason, I have taken the case of the Jaiti state, Tibet, and Buryat. So, epic as a genre is an ongoing attempt to tell the stories of the past in such a way as to make them relevant and even necessary to the present. In this sense, epic can be defined as a poetic narrative of length and complexity that centers around the deed of significance of a specific community. Gesar epic is considered as one of the largest epic in the world, and it has a large body of versions. And Gesar epic is sung throughout Central Asia, Tibet, Mongolia, parts of Russia, northern Pakistan, Sikkim, Bhutan, and throughout Ladakh. So, for the purpose of this presentation, I will be focusing on the changing dynamics of the relevance of Gesar epic in the present socio-political sphere and the complexities of epic performance in the context of nation building and identity formation. Epic has a peculiar and a complex connection to nation and local cultures, which explains its political potency. and political potency is this political explosiveness is evident in the charged contemporary performance of the epic and the intense reimagining of the epic to appease the political intentions of nation building and identity formation. In this context, nationalism, epics, and cultural identities are intertwined, whereby epics giving meanings and symbols to a shared expression of an individual or a regional or a communal identity. First, I will talk about Geser epic and the Chinese state, and how the Chinese state has managed to use Geser epic as a political tool. And Geser has been invented as a political tool by the People's Republic. The Chinese state has defined Geser as a secular figure in order to promote cultural integrity. And in the People's Republic of China, Geser epic has been promoted as a secular folklore rather than as a Buddhist ethic. And secondly, the Chinese state has also managed to appropriate the Geser epic by using the strategy of domestication and smoothing out of the Buddhist elements from it, so that it becomes more easy for the domestic or the Chinese people to digest. And the Chinese state has also used Geser as a propaganda tool. If one looks at the Chinese state's a website of Geser studies, it mentions that Geser epic is the greatest contribution that the Chinese nation has made to human civilization. Here, the Chinese state has managed to claim that Tibet has always been an integral part of China, and that the Geser epic is Chinese. And the Chinese state has also been successful in inscribing the state representative interpretation of the Geser epic in the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage List. So, in this sense, the Chinese state has been using Geser epic as a propaganda tool and as a political tool. But on the other hand, whatever the main objective of the Chinese state in sponsoring the Geser studies was to create a national epic by claiming the epic as its own. However, the Tibetans saw the state sponsoring of the epic as the recognition of the Tibetan culture by the Chinese authority, and it provided the Tibetans a valuable platform to create a space for a shared ethnic identity. The Chinese authors have also been using Geser epic in their novels and stories in order to voice their opinion. In a book, in a novel called A Show to Delight the Masses by Tsewang Tondok, which is an extremely popular novel within the PRC and within Tibet. And the plot of this novel is based directly on Geser's journey to hell to deliver his notorious concubine. And in the novel, the story of the plot goes like this: in the novel, there's a very corrupt communist county chief. He suddenly dies in his office, and he finds himself in hell. And upon hearing the news of his death, a CD Lama from in Tibet, he goes to hell to deliver this county chief, and he manages to bring him back. So the Lama takes this mission to rescue the county chief, so that his nephew could be reappointed as a next Lama. So the novel is a satire, and it critiques the religious policy of the Communist Party of China, which is an atheist institution which nevertheless claims legitimacy on the selection of religious leaders. And in another such story, in the novel, the name of the novel is The Song of King Geser Ba Alai. And through this novel, the author has explored various themes concerning the Geser epic. In the novel, the author expresses his personal view on Geser through the protagonist interaction with Geser. And the novel deals with problems such as endless production of new Geser episodes and state-sponsored collecting and recording of the epics through chanters. And through these writings demonstrate the situation of intellectual in within PRC and in Tibet, where they negotiate with the state authorities in order to voice the opinion without being branded as anti-government. And in another instance, such as the state-sponsored Geser festival, the Chinese state has tried to empty the Geser festival of all its religious contents and make it as an object of tourism. But the Tibetans, however, have used these festivals as a space of cultural expression and a place to affirm their identity. And for the Tibetans, the epic remains a matter of national pride and a symbol of Tibetanness. And here we see the Chinese state using the Geser epic as a political tool of nation building, whereas on the other hand, the Tibetans have used the epic in order to assert their cultural identity. Next, I will talk about how Geser has been reinvented in Buryatia after 1940s. After 1940s, the political system was quite uncertain in Russia, and the academic elites of Buryat felt a need of a shared symbol, and they reinvented Geser to reassert Geser as a tool, as a defense system. And the Geser epic has been used by the Buryat academic elites as an attempt to create a sense of collective history in order to reinvent a tradition that was under crisis. And Geser Jubilee was celebrated in 1999, and it was an effort to kindle a spirit of shared Buryat identity. And festivals such as Geseradia, Altargana are being celebrated in Buryatia, and they are steeped in an effort to demonstrate a conception of shared ethnic Buryat identity. And national parks are being named after Geser, and Geser statues are. One can find Geser statues around in Buryatia, and all these are done in order to assert a shared feeling of Buryat identity. So, in this sense, the epic has been used by the Buryat academic elites in order to assert their cultural identity. So, in this sense, the Geser epic has been used as a political tool for nation building, as well as in order to assert their cultural identity. Thank you.